Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another driver ratings, guys, which is where I give the drivers from 1 to 20 on the grid a rating out of 10 for their race performance on the Sunday. This week is obviously Mexico for the race that we had yesterday. Guys, don't forget, if you are new around here, you can subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification so you can keep up to date with all our latest content just like this, and obviously you can follow us with Twitter as well with our handle up in the top right corner. But guys, let's get into those driver ratings, and we're going to start off with number 1, and that is Lewis Hamilton. And Lewis Hamilton for me scores a 9 out of 10 for his performance. I thought it was a fantastic drive by the soon to be crowned world champion for a 6th time. He will secure that title in USA if he finishes the race, because he now only needs 4 points to secure that title. And in the race itself, he thought he actually pitted too early, but Mercedes again got their strategy absolutely spot on, and he was able to manage those hard tyres for an incredibly long stint and maintain performance, which is the most important fact, that the other competitors didn't really even get close to chasing him down. So it's a 9 out of 10 for him. As soon as he got the lead of the race, he did not look back, and it was a convincing win from the champ. Second up, we have Sebastian Vettel, and for me he scores an 8 out of 10. It was a very good drive for Sebastian Vettel, started second and finished second. He did a very good stint on the mediums, but on the strategy they should have really pitted. As soon as Lewis Hamilton went in, they should have pitted Sebastian Vettel at the same time, because he was never going to catch from there on in. They should have backed the hard tyre performance. The wake in terms of following allowed him never really to get close to Lewis Hamilton, and it was very difficult for Sebastian Vettel. But him himself drove a very good race, going 15 laps longer on those medium tyres and still maintaining race performance was very good. So an 8 out of 10 for Sebastian Vettel for me. 7 out of 10 for the third driver, and that is Valtteri Bottas. He drove a very good race himself. Again, strategy, he went deep. The only reason I'm not going to give him a higher rating for yesterday's race is because of the fact that when he had the opportunity to perform the undercut on Sebastian Vettel, he wasn't able to make it stick. Sebastian Vettel was able to get back out in front of Valtteri, and then that was his race over from then. Again, unfortunate because he wasn't really able to follow closely, because as soon as he got close to Sebastian Vettel, that superior pace for the Ferrari on the straight was able to maintain that distance, and he didn't really look close. I think it was about 1.4 seconds was the gap in the end. He did get it under to a second and in the DRS zone in the end, but he just wasn't able to kind of make it stick. So 7 out of 10 for me for Valtteri Bottas. In P4 we had Charles Leclerc, and a 7 out of 10 again. I think Charles drove a pretty good race from what he could do, because again Ferrari, they start off 1-2. Charles Leclerc is starting P1 in the race, maintains that P1 up until the first pit stop, and then they decide to put him on a 2-stop strategy. But they force him onto a 2-stop strategy because they don't even give him the option that if he manages his tyres well, that he could change it into a 1-stop strategy on the hards, which he might have been able to do, as looking at what Lewis Hamilton did, and obviously Danny Rick did in the Renault as well, because they pitted him and put him on another set of mediums straight away, which, was a baffling decision. And Ferrari, I think I tweeted out during the race, was, we all make mistakes, and I think you just expect Ferrari to make mistakes in strategy in the race. It's just expected now. If they get it right, it's more of a surprise than what's expected. In P5 we had Alex Albon, and one of his best races for Red Bull. He is Mr. Consistent. If we look from the summer break, from when he stepped into that seat, he has performed as well as can be expected. And I'm fully expecting, I said it in the race reaction yesterday, for him to be confirmed that second Red Bull driver. He does enough. He isn't on Max Verstappen's level, but he will be the Valtteri Bottas style driver for Red Bull. He's good enough performance, he's still young, might still kick on and improve. Max Verstappen is the talent aside, they both get on nice and easy, and he is getting the performances that Pierre Gasly, quite frankly, wasn't. Another solid race, another race where he beats Max Verstappen. Although if Max Verstappen had kept things in check, he would have easily beaten Alex Albon within this race. But 5th position, very good for Alex Albon. And in 6th place is Max Verstappen, and he gets a 6 out of 10 for me. Mucked up his race by obviously doing the thing on Saturday by ignoring the yellow flag and therefore getting the 3 grid place penalty and dropping down to P4, which then meant he was involved in a racing incident at the start with Lewis Hamilton. Both were kind of trying to give each other room. It's a very narrow part of the track. Unfortunately, Max Verstappen came off worse. Already frustrated probably by the prospect that he'd lost out pole position unnecessarily. Now back in P8, working his way through the field, went bold on a move for Valtteri Bottas. Too bold, got a puncture, ended up at the back of the field, and then he drove a very good race from then and finished P6, which is the best he could have hoped for on that day. But for me, it's the kind of end of his own doing. I saw a lot of people saying that he had a great race. Obviously, he was voted driver of the day. I completely disagree with that. Any of the top 6 drivers, it's been shown numerous times in this season, if they go back far in the grid because they've had to make an early pit stop because of an incident that they've been involved in, they've always minimum finished P6. I think the only one who hasn't was Valtteri Bottas. But it wasn't an incredible drive. He did what I expected him to do, and his rash decision, obviously in qualifying and we're getting that puncture with Valtteri Bottas, really marks down Max Verstappen this weekend. He really should have been competing for the win because he had fantastic race pace, but instead P6 and an opportunity missed for him. Moving on to P7 and one of my drivers of the day, and that is Checo Perez in his home Grand Prix, finishing best of the rest of the field. Fantastic tyre management. I said in my qualifying reaction when he was in P11 it was a great position for Sergio to be in, and he was going to have a great race because he could choose that option tyre, and as we'll talk about when we get to McLaren's, that was vital because it allowed him to do a one-stop strategy, which meant he started on the hards and then finished on the medium compound. And yeah, that just meant he could go really long in that first stint, recover, and he did fantastic to hold off Danny Ricciardo at the end, who was on fresher tyres. Danny Rick messed up his opportunity looking up into turn 1, I believe, and Perez kept him behind from there. But after retiring in his home Grand Prix last year, this is a really great result for Checo Perez. So well done, Checo, on that one. P8, mentioned him, Danny Ricciardo. He's going to get an 8 out of 10 for me, and he drove an absolutely unbelievable stint. Pirelli said that the hard compound could last 50 laps, and Daniel Ricciardo made the hard compound last 50 laps. He was the last driver to pit. It was an absolute immense first stint on that tyre. He was running P6 for most of the race. My only criticism that stops him getting a 9 out of 10 for this race is he wasn't able to make the move stick on Sergio Perez. He obviously locked up and missed up on his opportunity. He wasn't able to get past there. He probably should have waited at another opportunity. He had the pace, he had the freshness in his tyres, he had the laps in hand. He probably got a little bit too greedy and chose the wrong opportunity to do it. But still an absolute fantastic race for Danny Ricciardo. He gets an 8 out of 10. And then we move on to P9, and that is Pierre Gasly. Again, remains consistent. I think this is a pretty good result. He was running outside of the points until Daniel Kvyat got that late penalty, so that should be noted. But I think there was an upset stomach going around the teams, I think on the Thursday and Fridays, which affected them, quite a lot of the team members, badly. I know McLaren were badly affected, and Pierre Gasly was one of the drivers who was affected by this. So he was never going to be 100%, still a strong, solid performance. He was thereabouts with the penalty, takes advantage and gets another situation where he beats his teammate, although due to penalties this time, not on outright pace. But Pierre Gasly remains to be a very good driver in that Toro Rosso, and he looks like the driver that he was last year rather than the shadow of that driver that he was in his first 6 months of the season with Red Bull. But I'm going to give him a solid 7 out of 10. Solid performance for Pierre Gasly. P10 was Nico Hülkenberg, and he was running in P9 until Daniel Kvyat made that late move on him and spun him out into the wall. He then was obviously classified as P11 in the race, but due to Daniel Kvyat's penalty was promoted back into the points, making Renault the only constructor outside of the top 3 teams to have a double points finish. But wasn't necessarily a great race. I'm going to give Nico Hülkenberg a 7 out of 10 because he just wasn't in comparison or in the same league as Daniel Ricciardo, and I think he is showing. A lot of people rate Nico Hülkenberg as a guy that maybe given the opportunity in a top team might have been able to compete, but I think you just have to look at him compared to teammate Daniel Ricciardo, and yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is really convincingly beating Nico Hülkenberg now, and yeah, I think it's his time. Hopefully he goes into other series, and I can imagine him being successful in other series, but his time in F1 looks well and truly up for me. In P11 is Daniel Kvyat, and he is going to get a 4 out of 10 for me. He had driven a solid race with the Toro Rossos, shown good pace, especially they were on the 2-stop strategy as well, having to start on the soft tyres after qualifying into Q3 on them, which obviously proved as a disadvantage, like I said, when we talk about McLaren. He was driving a good race, running in P10, running in the points ahead of Pierre Gasly, and then he went for a move on Nico Hülkenberg that just wasn't there for me. It was on, I think, the last corner, clipped the back wheel of Nico Hülkenberg, nowhere near alongside of him. He was very upset with the penalty, saying that they're anti-racing, the stewards. But for me, this was a slam dunk penalty. You know, he went for a place. Nico didn't have to give him the room because he was ahead. He had the racing line, and Kvyat was never realistically going to pass there. It was a silly place to try and do it. And yeah, 4 out of 10 for me. And he cost him points for his team. So yeah, bad for Toro Rosso there. And then in P12 is Racing Point and Sergio Perez teammate Lance Stroll. Again, compromised his race by having another poor performance in qualifying, going out in Q1. Again, for me, Lance Stroll, if he can sort out his Saturday performance, he has a car with pace. It is frustrating because he's good on a Sunday, but he wasn't really with Checo, even on race pace today. 12th, outside the points, in a car that had pace and had potential. Yeah, a disappointing race for Lance Stroll. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. In P13 we have Carlos Sainz, and Carlos Sainz was really mucked over by the good performance that him and Lando had in qualifying, which meant that they got into Q3, because that meant that they had to start on the soft compound, and the soft compound just tore up far too easily on Mexico circuit, which meant that they weren't able to do a long stint. So yeah, not great for Carlos Sainz, forced onto 2-stop strategy, and then 13 in no man's land. The man who is usually best of the rest and usually drives so well, outside the points in a very rare case of being outside the points of not a mechanical failure. But yeah, it seems unfair because obviously he's done well on the Saturday to qualify, and he's punished for doing well on qualifying on a Saturday by having to do a 2-stop strategy, where the likes of Perez and Ricciardo, who finished in Q2, were able to choose their tyre options, and then obviously were able to do long stints and get a better race result, which is where it really matters at the end of the day. 14th is Giovinazzi, and Alpha's season has really just come to an end. They're not really fighting for anything. P8 in the Constructors is probably where they're going to finish, unless Haas somehow finds some performance and some points, which seems very unlikely in the last 3 races of the season. So they've got nothing really to fight for. Didn't really see Giovinazzi at all. If anyone knows of anything Giovinazzi did in the race, please comment below, because I thought he was a ghost. He's only there in terms of because he was competing. So yeah, P14, 5 out of 10. Can't really criticise him. The car performance isn't there anymore. P15 was Kevin Magnussen in his 100th Grand Prix in Mexico. I think there was a collision with Raikkonen early doors, which caused damage to his floor, which meant that his pace was compromised. But let's be honest, the Haas pace probably wasn't going to be there anyway. Yeah, frustrating for him in his 100th Grand Prix. Probably wanted a better performance, but he was really upbeat about the chances of Haas in 2020 in terms of correcting the mistakes they've made this year and being back more towards competing in the midfield rather than where they've gone, which is dropped to the uncompetitiveness of Williams. So yeah, for that I give Kevin Magnussen a 5 out of 10. Moving on to the Williams, we have George Russell in P16, 6 out of 10. Not really much to say. I'm only giving him a 6 out of 10 because he managed to finish ahead of a car that wasn't a Williams, which was Romain Grosjean. So well done, George. Again, there's not really much to say about the Williams. P17 was Romain Grosjean. I think he was involved in the collision at the start. I couldn't find it, but I saw that he dropped towards the back of the field at the start of the Grand Prix. So yeah, not great for him there. I don't know whether he just had a poor start or whether there was contact with anyone. But 4 out of 10 for Romain Grosjean, mainly just because he finished behind a Williams. And then rounding off the classified finishes, P18, Robert Kubica. He's probably in switch off mode now, thinking of his next career move and who he's going to be racing for, whether that be DTM or another racing series, and just going through the motions really in a car that is just so uncompetitive. 5 out of 10 for Robert Kubica. You can't really criticise him, but you can't really praise him either. And then in our retirees, I didn't see the problem and I couldn't find out the problem. So if anyone can tell me why Kimi Raikkonen retired, that'd be great. But he DNF'd at some point during the midpoint or second half of the race. And then, so I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. Yeah, is what it is. And Lando Norris is the final driver to give a rating. And, oh, when is Lando's luck going to come in? It is really impressive how many points he's scored, with how many things he's had to retire from and be hindered from in the race that are just purely out of his control. And he was given the green light in the pit to go when his tyre wasn't on. He managed to stop before the end so they could wheel him back and push him on. He was a lap down by that point, but in all honesty, it probably would have been better him leaving the pit and retiring at that stage, because he ended up being 2 laps down and they retired him because there was real no point in terms of wasting and putting general wear on the parts of the McLaren, because it was just a write-off weekend for them. Very unfortunate indeed, and again a driver punished for getting through to Q3, which, like I said, seems pretty unfair. For me, the race was probably a 6 out of 10 performance because yeah, it was good and it looked like the race was boiling to a really exciting climax between those top 4 drivers of the Ferraris and the Mercedes, but then it just fizzled out. Lewis managed to secure it. Sebastian was able to maintain the gap between Bottas. Bottas was able to maintain podium position, and Charles Leclerc, after his lock-up in pursuit of Bottas, wasn't able to do anything. But there you go, guys. Those are our driver ratings. Would love to hear your driver ratings in the comments below and what you thought of the race as a whole. We will be back tomorrow with our full race review podcast, where me and Ash will look at the race in a bit more depth. But for now, guys, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Let us know you like it. And if you are new around here, subscribe to the channel. We are very close to hitting 100 subscribers, which would be quite a nice achievement for us. I think me and Ash, when we started this, we're just guys who enjoy talking about F1. Obviously, Stephen's come in as well. We just love chatting, and it's quite nice that you guys enjoy listening to us chat about it. So if you could help out and get us over the 100 mark, that would be absolutely fantastic. But guys, you F1 fans, keep racing.